I'm thinking something like.
He totally seemed like a normal dude, though.
Yeah.
I really like talking to him.
I love Kevin James Thornton. I was nervous. I was nervous for this one.
Why do you think? Just because he's famous?
No, because he's very chill and like compared to the other people. I mean, the other guests were chill, but they make jokes a lot and aren't as like I know that area of being like, we're kidding about trauma.
Yeah.
But I feel like Kevin can just like look at you and be like, that's what I said.
That's what I felt more in my element with him, with the not make, because I mean, in a therapy room, if someone's laughing, you're just like, can we get to it? Like, let's get past this thing. You know, like I don't laugh at stuff like when the jokes are being made. And so he was just talking about it. And so I was like, this felt more like a therapy, like a real talking about things in therapy.
That's so cool.
Yeah. That felt like a first or second session of getting to know somebody. It was cool. I
love that. Because he had, like, you were surprised that he hadn't been to therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I do follow him on Instagram, and the ability for him to talk about his story in a way that, yes, he's making jokes about it, but he also has other videos where he talks about the awareness of his experiences in his story without being triggered, and the awareness of how it's affected him. And that, to me, indicates he's done some work.
Yeah.
And so
on his own.
Yeah. So that's why I was like, let us know, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah. I felt like especially like towards the end, I felt like I learned a lot. I could have kept asking both of you questions, because there was like knowledge on both sides that I was like, oh, and then what next? So I really enjoyed this one a lot.
He's fun. It was like the perfect mix of being funny but not letting it bypass the story. I love it. Yeah, he's a good storyteller.
He is. He is. I'm excited to see where he goes in his comedy.
I wanted to ask him, like, there's got to be a point where you run out of stories.
Right.
I couldn't remember hardly any stories of my childhood. I didn't remember so many, but I would think that, like, how do you keep going if that's, learning with comedians that's a huge source of material. Right. Like, where do you go with that?
But I mean, he talks about his new hour and how like he's shifted into a new, like, my new realization of I'm not just, like a gay man. Like, I guess things just keep happening.
Yeah. I think just being authentic and the human experience, Yes. Everybody has their own perspective. So, and he's got a good one.
He does.
So, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for everyone to hear it. So enjoy the episode, everyone. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. You were talking about before we started filming that you've never been to therapy?
No, I would go. I don't know. Like I was saying, I'm very like the epitome of Generation X. Like, we raised ourselves with the television. We didn't have the word trauma. I mean, I'm learning now.
Yeah.
Through the kids. I see the trauma within myself, but I've never gone, and it's just not something I feel good today. Like, there's no pain inside of me that I think would propel me to seek something out.
Yeah.
But I'm open to it. Is it about to happen? Should I brace myself?
That's not how it works. I mean, I guess it could, but you never know. No, I'm one of the few. I had TikTok for like a second, and so that's how I first saw you. And then I'm on Instagram. I'm one of the older generations, I guess. But it seems from seeing your content, you have done a lot of work. So I'm surprised to hear you'd not been to a therapist. So I'm curious.
It was like unintentional work, I think.
Like, what did that look like? Because I like hearing it's not just this one way you have to try to heal your trauma by going to a trauma therapist. There's so many ways to do it. So how do you feel like you worked through some of we know religious trauma is a big part of your story. I'm sure there's more, But what do you think you
honestly
turn to, and how
it took like 25 years, so maybe therapy would have been like an easier.
Yeah.
Well, I think healing's just a continual thing until we're not human anymore.
Yeah, like it. Honestly, I'm 49, and on my 40th birthday, I was basically homeless and like at the rock bottom.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I think I had to like get to the end of my rope or something.
Would force you to do something.
Yeah. And then like, I don't know. It's only really the last decade of my life that I have felt like a whole person.
Mm-hmm. What would you contribute that to? Where you got from that place, at 40 to now?
It's because somehow, so when I left fundamentalist Christianity, this is like 30 years ago. I was in my late teens, early 20s. And I think looking back now, because like my whole world view and like my whole identity was completely shattered and like taken from me. And I focused like everything into my identity as a performer. And like I see that now. I didn't know that's what I was doing back then.
Did you feel like another part of you got created that could perform?
Yeah. It was almost like I have to prove myself. I have to make it to like prove that I exist or something. Yeah. I don't know. Does that make sense? And like, so I was like desperate for 20 years.
Yeah.
Because and I think you could feel it on me. Even in like my early stand-up, when I watch it now, I'm like, ugh, like, oh God. Something came up in my Facebook memories. And
those always get you.
Yeah, and it was a show in Los Angeles in like 2009.
Yeah.
And I just sat there like I was doing this like the whole time. I was like watching it and here, like, oh my God, I can hear like panic in my voice.
Yeah.
Were you still talking about kind of the same thing you do today?
No, it was garbage.
Come on, that can't be true.
It was not personal at all. It was like it was all these like weird observations about like it was dumb stuff. It was there was a long part where I talked about the movie Footloose. It didn't even make any sense. Like, it was garbage. But I could hear, I was watching myself and I remember how that was almost at the end of, before I like became homeless and like at the end. But I could see like the desperation all over me. I could hear it in my voice.
How did you know, I call them bathroom floor moments. How did you know you keep saying the end? How do you know you were there?
I think I did this weird like self-prophecy because my whole like younger life, I always said, I don't want to be this like failed 40-year-old loser artist. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. Like I did it. I think I like knew like my whole life, like that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this come true. And then like that, I left LA in like 2010. And I went on the road for a while. And then I was just broke and like barely making it. And then I came back to Nashville and like all of my belongings were in my trunk. And I just kind of lived in my car for a while.
All right, when did you come to Nashville?
I've been here on and off for 20 years.
Okay. Same.
So I moved here after college. And then I moved to LA for like 2 years. And then I went on the road for a long time. And then I was just at the end. I was tired and broke. I became the 40-year-old failed artist.
Like I achieved it.
Yep.
then what came next?
And then I was like, I think I have to do something different. I was like, I'm not happy. I've like chased something my whole life and it didn't pan out and I knew it wouldn't. Yeah. Like I somehow like did it to myself. So I like got a job and just started like living like a normal person. I thought I was done with stand-up. It didn't work. I put so much energy into it and it didn't work.
How did you feel in that moment where you were like, all right, I'm shifting?
I felt free. I felt like finally I can be happy or something.
Wow.
Well, well, you talk about it almost like this doing stand-up was like a role you had to play. And when you got the pressure of like not having to do that a certain way and live up to a certain thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's really neat you ended up back doing that. You eventually circled back around.
Yeah, but like it's so. I mean, the last 2 years have been a whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
And when it started, I told my agent, my new agent, that I wanted to go into this very tentatively because I didn't want to return to that place.
Yeah.
But I'm nowhere near that place. I mean, I did 50 cities this year and I feel incredible. Like, because I'm not, whatever I was doing 10 years ago is not present anymore.
So
Is this therapy?
If it is, how do you feel about it?
Feels good.
Oh.
Wait, do I pay for this?
Emotionally, yeah.
No, I just approach things with curiosity, really. I think humans are interesting. But I'm learning about comedians that it seems it's a thing, a recurring theme I hear you guys talk about, that it's...
Am I saying the same bullshit that ever...
No. What I mean is using it's like becoming, it seems like a goal to become aware of your own personal story, and then how does that work into the comedy that you do? It just seems like that's a natural way to do the craft, and I didn't really realize that.
Well, also, and my material now is very personal.
Well, yeah.
And it wasn't at all.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, if has that been the evolution of how you, because you're storytelling in a very unique way through being funny, you know? And there's, I think, you know, we talk about the flip side that it can either like keep us from really understanding because we're making fun of it, so we're not really going deep into this stuff, but then, or it can really help us move through and process by the storytelling. And do you feel like that's the main vehicle of how you went through and became aware of you seem very aware of your story and how it's impacted you, and like you said, it's not living in you getting triggered all the time.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I feel like after the living in a car moment,
that little peanut.
Yeah. It was a Chevy Beretta too. It was a 1997. It was the shittiest car of all time.
And it was my home.
And that's where I lived. Happiness became my number one priority because I never really, this sounds so sad, but I feel like I realized I had never really felt it before.
Yeah.
And that's a combination of, and now I know, especially because from TikTok, and there's all these like things that come up about people who are deconstructing their religious trauma. Those are words I never knew. But like, I didn't know that like I left that world and just started like running, you know, and I never wanted to admit that like Jesus was still affecting me. So I was kind of like in denial about it. Like, I don't give a fuck about Jesus, you know, whatever. And like, can I say that on this show?
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to admit that experience deeply affected me.
Yeah.
So I kind of pretended that it didn't. And that kind of became a thing. And it just, and then just like for 20 years, I was just trying to prove myself to myself and everybody else. And that wasn't working. And you know, and so I just had this moment where I was like, all I want to do is feel good. So whatever that takes. And I guess I put a lot of thought into what that would be.
Will you share a little bit about that? What happiness, what that would
like? Well,
for you?
I think, you know, I started reading about Buddhism and this idea of like ambition can be really terrible feeling, or like, you know, this idea of like no ambition is where peace is. And my whole life had been ambition.
Letting go of outcome.
What's that?
Letting go of outcomes.
Yeah. You know, so I thought like to be happy, I have to have this like successful career.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that didn't work. I'm one, not successful, and two, not happy, you know? So this idea of like freeing yourself from ambition I'd never considered that before. So I put a lot of thought into that.
Yeah.
Like, can I release that from myself? Like, can I live a life that's just like here right now? You know, it has nothing to do with, am I going to be a famous comedian someday?
Wow.
Which I am, but
dude, that's such an amazing, like, peaceful realization. I'm just like, do you remember the day or the moment that you thought of all that, or was it more of a process?
Like that. Yeah, it was a process. It was like it was a slow process. It was like mainly in my early 40s. You know, like I came back to Nashville. I met someone, you know, and had a relationship for the first time in my life, really. We adopted cats. You know, I just started doing things that were just like normal people things. But I'd never done any of that before.
Were they things you didn't feel like you either had the right to do or gave yourself permission to do?
They were things that I thought would hinder my successful career.
I can't tell you how many times it's when you let go of something, that's when, I call it flow. That's just when it starts happening. And it sounds like that's when you're just like, okay, I'm not going to try to make it happen. And then it just.
Yeah. Oh, and sometimes happened. People, with my whole TikTok and Instagram experience, have said like, something to the effect of like, when you stop looking, that's when it happens. And for at least for me, that's not quite it. It feels more like I stopped looking because I didn't need it anymore. Like that changed my energy or something.
Yeah.
Because you had like your partner and your
and actually for the first time I felt like peaceful and happy. I'm like, this is way better. I'm not going back to that. You know, like I don't even know what I was thinking with all that bullshit. Like,
there wasn't like there really wasn't like when you were just living the normal life, you didn't like see people doing what you used to want and feel like, oh, should I go back? It was really
there was some bittersweetness. It was never should I go back, because the feeling I had was way better. Like, you know, it's like, but I would definitely like, I mean, it's Nashville, so like I've had a couple friends whose careers really took off in the music industry and stuff, and I would kind of look at it and be like, why didn't that happen for me? But also like, but I'm happier now, so this is cool. It's bittersweet.
Yeah.
Or that's how I felt then, because now things have worked out.
Because you're like, now I'm famous. That's so dope. That's so dope. Can you talk about like what made you leave the church?
Well, it's because I'm a homosexual.
Oh.
I mean, that really is like what I think that if I were not gay, I think I would have never left, and I think I would have become a terrible manipulative male pastor in that culture. I was already sort of I was being groomed to be that, because I can talk in front of people.
Yeah.
And so my church, I think in that culture this is like 1991. Like I was thinking like after high school, I'm going to probably go get a Bible degree and become a pastor. And I was already sort of like doing young pastory things in my small towns, you know? And, but at that same time, sort of secretly knowing that I'm gay. Like, I'm not even really thinking those words, but I like kind of knew, but wouldn't let that thought pass through my head. Yeah. But slowly knowing like, this is bad. This is real bad. You know? Like, this is not going to work. Like, I don't know how, like, because especially in those days, you know, it was pre-internet. And so like the only voices I really heard were those around me. Yeah. And, you know, in a small town in Indiana in 1991, like there was nothing worse than being gay, you know, and I was like, and I am that. I was going to resist it. In my mind, I was going to like fight it and overcome it or something. You know?
How they say you can do.
Right.
Yeah.
And I even sort of went through a primitive version of conversion therapy.
Whoa.
Like that wasn't really a thing yet. Yeah. But there were lots of books on the subject. There was this thing called Exodus Ministries.
I remember that.
You do? Yeah. So I read everything that they printed and started like kind of putting those thoughts in my head. And then they had this thing in Chicago that was like a meeting that I went to a couple of times where like I guess I did go to therapy, but it was that. Like a counselor sat down with me and like explained to me that like I'm gay because my parents didn't hug me enough or something. It really was kind of like that. Wow. They didn't say that exactly, but that's kind of what they were saying. And I wanted that to make sense so badly. So I like kind of believed that that's what happened. What was the question? Oh, why I left. So, I was going to stay there and like do a pastor thing. And so after high school, I stayed there for like 2 more years. And I kept doing this thing where I would like secretly fall in love with someone like a person in the church. And we become best friends, you know.
Fall in love with a guy?
Yeah. And we'd like spend a lot of time together and pray together a lot. Or, I don't know, like and I just kept doing that to myself. And then I like the worst one was with this guy, and then he got engaged to a girl in the church and got married, and I was just like, I'm an idiot. Yeah. Like that was like the most like lucid thought I had of like, I did that. This is stupid. I did this to myself. And I sort of like, out of grief, fled to college. And that's when the change. I didn't think I was leaving Christianity. I thought I was just getting out of Evansville and going to school.
Right.
But you were around more like bigger ideas and more acceptance.
Oh, I went straight into the musical theater
department. The gayest church there is. Okay.
Yes. That's when the healing began. 525,600 minutes.
It's the counselor you went to that was like, oh, your parents, and was that the first time you had said I'm gay?
Yeah.
To that person? I'm sorry.
We didn't say I'm gay. We said I'm struggling with my sexuality.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've had a lot of, I can't tell you how many, the stories of when I'm working with clients, there's stories where they're taken into a room for these conversations with pastors. And they have some explanation of why something's wrong with you, and the choice of, you want to go to hell or do you want to repent and figure out how not to be gay?
Yeah.
It's sad.
It's a lot.
Those are high stakes.
Yeah.
Well,
is there an in-between option?
Well, yeah. Well, especially if you're a young person, it's like lose your family or, lose yourself. It's hard choices that are given, that those things are still going on today. Like, conversion therapy is still a thing, even though there's research that says that does not work. But yeah.
How did you, when you found like a community in college, like how did you go from there to homeless?
Oh, well, that was like 20 years later. So.
Okay.
So. Is that the question? Yeah. So I went to college.
Is that your final question?
And then I graduated college and moved into my car.
I'm like, wow.
So, no, there's a lot of time in between all that. So, and even my first couple of years of college, it wasn't like I'm done with Christianity. Like my first couple of years of college, I went to a Christian campus church. And simultaneously would like go to a gay bar for the first time, or so I was like living this double life for a minute. And then by the end of college, I was totally done with Christianity, and had accepted myself and was living as a open person. And then I moved to Nashville, and that's like 2000, the year 2000, like 1999, 2000. And I moved here for music, and I did music stuff for many years, tried to get a record deal. I mean, that was like several years, and then that fell apart, and I was like, I have to do something different. I'm going to do stand-up comedy. And that's when I moved to LA.
Wow.
And did that. So, it was like a 20-year process. And then, after 2 decades of trying to like prove myself and being miserable about it, that's when I moved into my car, the Chevy Beretta.
Wow. I'm just like, what do you do in there?
Well, I do. I guess I should say.
Is that when you were making those videos in your car singing in front of Kroger?
Yeah. I still spend a lot of time in my car, I guess.
Sorry, those are the videos you were posting when I first saw you.
The reason I film so much in my car, I've never thought about that. Maybe I just feel really at home.
You do.
But
we're connecting the dots.
The reason, honestly, that I film so much in my car, that was very much a pandemic thing. Because do you remember in the early days of the pandemic when you weren't supposed to go anywhere except for the grocery store?
Yes.
I would go to the grocery store, and then I'd come out and just sit in my car. Because because I didn't want to go back home. Didn't we all kind of do that? Like, I'm going to sit here outside of the grocery store parking lot for a while.
And just be.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
I have a question about like your spirituality now, I guess you would say. Like I remember when I was like deep in the church, and then I turned from it, and I got mad at God. And then it kind of shifted later where I was like, oh, I'm not like mad at God. I'm mad at what people told me God was.
Yeah.
Do you relate to that at all? Or like, what would you say? Are you spiritual now? Are you?
I'm spiritual in the sense of, I mean, I think humans are very feely in the universe.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that I definitely, you know, I've gone through lots of phases where I would say I'm agnostic, or I'm spiritual, or no, I'm an atheist. And today I'm much more like, I don't know, but like, I think I think there's a spirituality of humans, you know, we're still just like on a rock in space, and who knows what. I hope there's like angels and gods and stuff. That would be amazing, you know? but I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, people seem to have some kind of sense about them,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that means, and I'm into that, I guess.
I have a question that came up whenever you were talking about, you're like, when I accepted myself, and you were just in college, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you allowed yourself to like outwardly be who you like, dress how you wanted to dress, or be with who you wanted to be with? Or do you feel like it was an internal thing of really accepting yourself?
No, that was probably a longer process.
Okay.
I mean, I think like when I showed up in Nashville, I would have said I'm an out gay man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was, you know, dating people and living that life. But I think that there was just I mean, look, this is all in retrospect. Because I'd just gone through so much like crazy change.
Yeah.
From like ages 17 to 24.
Yeah.
It's like two different people,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. It feels like shedding layers.
Yeah.
Of like, if you shed the Christianity label, and you maybe move to an environment that let you kind of be a little bit more yourself. But I think it's the inside thing that changes, is why we experience things different, I think. And when you changed internally of like what success felt like for you, that's when you saw something change. And so there's just the part of giving yourself permission to do something different than before, versus it allows you to get to that internal, like, who am I? And am I really okay with who I am?
Mm-hmm.
To where nothing out here gets a say. Can't change that for you.
And that's the thing that I said at the beginning that took 25 years.
Yeah.
So therapy would have been quicker.
You don't know that.
Yeah. I guess so.
It's a constant thing. And people are probably in therapy for 20 years and don't get that. So I think it's really cool that you have figured. Will you talk a bit about how you moved into the comedy part of that, and how, because you've talked about that, just your journey, and you encourage a lot of people, I think, to do the same. I'm sure you get that feedback all the time, but
yeah. It's when I look back, I never thought I was going to be a comedian, even though like all through school I was the class clown.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my way to get people to like me or whatever. But like teachers loved me just because I was constantly saying funny things.
Mm-hmm.
But on the weird part of that is all of my creativity all through my younger years was always expressed like super dramatic and serious.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved to do like edgy, dark plays, like in the theater department. Like I wanted everything to be like super heavy, and like I did. Like I was always like I was in several bands when I was younger, and it was this always like really dark, like heavy music. And I never thought of myself as like someone who could make a living being funny.
Mm-hmm.
That never really crossed my mind for most of my younger years. And even like in the theater department in college, I remember like a couple times trying to do like a comedic monologue and like no one laughing in the class, you know, and being like, comedy's really hard. Like, I don't think I'm good at it. Even though I was constantly making people laugh in real life, you know? So when the band that I had started in Nashville, when that sort of started not working, this is like 2007-ish, we had sort of got a record deal and it fell apart. And at that point I was like, well, that was 10 years of my life and I don't think I can start over on that. So now I want to do something totally different that I've never done before. And I started writing the stories about my youth group experiences. And like in a David Sedaris kind of way.
Oh, cool.
Like I wanted to like reflect on it. Because looking back, even at that point, I was like, that was all totally absurd. So I took one of those stories to an open mic in Nashville, and I just went up on stage and read it like David Sedaris. But like the room just like blew up with laughter. And I was like, I didn't know I could do that.
What a good
that
feeling.
was cool.
Wow.
Like, you know, like, so I so I did more. Like the laughter was very positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
but it was all I was telling stories about my church, but in a more like a just reading it sort of way, you know.
But people resonated.
That's like still heavy stuff, I feel like, to be like, wow, people are like, were you all like, oh, let's do more of this? Or were you like, okay, guys, don't laugh that hard? Like, how are you?
No, I was like,
You're like,
I'm
bring
all
it
in. I'm all in.
You're like, let's keep making fun of it.
This feels good.
No, so much so. So no, that's funny because I wasn't expecting that response, and I was like, oh hell yeah. And I literally was packing up to move to LA like 3 or 4 months later.
Wow.
Like, let's do this.
You were back on that, like, let's go back into this.
Yeah.
Even though you had that section where you were like, fuck this shit, I'm getting cats.
No, you've got the order all messed up.
When were you in your car? That's my question. No, I'm just kidding.
The car moment is like at the very end of like
Of trying to do comedy the first time.
Yeah, yes.
Did the car, and then you're like, fuck this. Or you wanted to do some music in there at some point. You had bands.
No, the music was way early.
Okay.
And then I was like,
how many lives have you lived?
Many. No, I was saying after my band failed, I wrote some stories, took them to open mic, and everyone laughed. I was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do.
Oh, and that's when you moved to LA. Yep.
And that was like 10 more years.
Yes.
Before the car.
Wow. Okay, that's really okay.
Well, how'd you wind right back around to being homeless in the car after that?
Wait, what?
Am I getting it wrong now?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were saying you
guys
went
are obsessed with me living in my car.
I'm just trying to track with you guys.
He left the church.
And then lived in my car.
And eventually moved to Nashville, tried stand-up comedy, moved to LA, and then eventually from there, it didn't pan out.
Yes.
And he lived in his car.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then started the normal
Yes.
life. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So,
Okay.
how from normal life did you get back to being like, let's try this again?
That was the TikTok thing. So I thought I was done with all of it. And then the pandemic happened. I got on TikTok, not thinking I was going to do something, just everyone was getting on TikTok, you know, and people were sharing videos. And so it's honestly just kind of an accident because I started telling my church stories again, but I'd seen someone else do that auto-tune thing. I didn't make that up. I saw other people do it. Like telling traumatic stories, but like as a song. Yes. I'm like, that's pretty funny. So I just did a couple of those with that effect and it just took off.
Wow.
Like, yeah. And so like, but even then I wasn't thinking I'm going to go back to stand up. It was just like, oh, that's crazy that that's taking off. But then like a few months later, I had like 1 million followers. And that's when like agents and people started knocking. And the agency that I signed with, they were like, do you want to do clubs again? And I'm like, I think this time will be different.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it has been.
There wasn't really apprehension. You were like, this feels different.
There was a little bit, because I was like, I was so burned out and I don't want to go back to that. But all of that like desperation and panic is not in me anymore.
Yeah.
So it has allowed me to like reapproach it. And like I said at the beginning, like though that early stand-up stuff I was doing was not good. Like it was
Footloose.
I was talking about Footloose.
But you thought it was good.
I guess so. I must have to be.
Yeah.
It's where you were.
Getting on stages and being like, let me tell you guys about the movie Footloose.
Can we have one Footloose joke? Do you remember?
Do you really want to? I don't even know if I want to say this.
Okay.
You don't have to.
He's like, do you really? What made you like? It could have been just like for fun, but what made you be like, I'm going to tell my Christian stories again?
Mm-hmm.
That all kind of just reassembled in the TikTok explosion, because I did a couple of those and they got such a big response. But then also people were commenting like, oh my God, that happened to me. Like this huge response of people saying, that's my experience too. So it was like funny, but people were like,
you made it palatable for people to
yeah, or
interact with.
I think it's a combination of like, they are kind of dark stories, but they're so absurd. And I think it was a combination of like, also like, I'm older now and I think my whole being is a lot softer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like even when I was like in LA, I looked a lot more LA.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like I've settled into more of a presence that I think people can look at and be like, oh, that guy went through some hard shit, but look at him now. He's like happy, almost Santa Claus kind of dude.
How do you feel now about, I mean, you're famous, so it's different, but how do you feel about like,
You are so sorry.
how do you feel about expectations with your career now with your experience from the past?
I love stand-up comedy. And like that's especially, this is like really a realization over the last year. It is my favorite thing I've ever done. And like I know a lot of comics are doing it, but really they want a TV show or something. Oh, that's fine. Or they like they want it as like a door to something else. And I'm like, if this is all that happens, I'm good. I'll just do this till I'm dead. Like I'm so satisfied.
What do you love so much about it?
The money. No, no, it's like, no, it's I just getting on stage and like making people laugh is so sad. I mean, you know, it's it's such a cool feeling.
Can you try to put it into words what that feeling is?
It's like maybe this is back to like the human-y spiritual thing of humans. There's like and this is part of like I love stand-up. There's like a crackle in the room. There's like an energy or something. It's hard to explain if you've not felt it, but like to stand on a stage and like you get in this like rhythm with a bunch of strangers, you know?
Yeah.
And like, it's like this wave of like energy.
Yeah,
Like
you're
to hear
sharing
the
something
laugh.
with someone.
Like the moment where you were like read your story and then heard all the laughter. Like that feeling. I imagine that feels really good.
Totally. And it's like, and I mean this, it's not entirely selfish. Like there's something, there's like a real back and forth flow about it. Like I feel like I'm doing good in the world.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like even if it's like a dick joke, you know, it's like you feel people, you feel like a human release.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I love it. And it's not something that could be, I mean, if I wrote a comedic film, that's great too, but it's not stand up. It's not that like back and forth flow of energy in a room
Yeah.
that I'm standing there and like leading it.
Yeah. How long have you been getting to do the stand up like after the pandemic, I guess? When did that?
So yeah, because of the pandemic, it was obviously like a rocky start because when things really started ramping up is when do you remember there were like 3 fake outs? So like there was like when the vaccines started coming out, there was for that summer, all bands and everyone was like, let's get back to work. We've got vaccines, it's over.
And they're like, just kidding.
Yeah, and then so like we booked a bunch of stuff, but then the Delta variant happened, and so we canceled like 3 months of stuff. And then that seemed to kind of be over. So went back out again, and then Omicron happened. So it was kind of a stop-start. for the most part, but nobody cares anymore, so we're back at we're back in business.
I know NPR every day is like, people have COVID. I'm like, no, they don't. That's over.
I have not had COVID. And I don't know how that's possible.
Do you want us to hook you up?
Yeah.
Okay. We can do that.
I mean, I've got all the vaccines and everything, of course, but how have I been?
You're one of the few. Like,
There's no way I have not breathed COVID in multiple times.
Yeah. That's wild.
that's good though.
I know. That's the stupidest thing I could have said. I don't do any more shows until
We're gonna get a message from you, like, guys, I just tested positive. We all have it now.
So you kind of talked about this a little bit, but you do such a great job of saying things. Like, we've talked about trauma with other comedians, and they're like, oh, it's hard sometimes talking about dark stuff, and people being like, oh. Like, have you ever experienced that where people go, ooh? Or people are like, it was the 90s.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I have an abortion joke, and it's not a joke about abortion. It's a joke about being a fundamentalist Christian and viewing abortion. I don't know. But
yeah, say more about that. No, I'm just kidding.
no, in my church we did this like clown play in the park to witness to people, and there were
A clown play?
we were dressed up like clowns. Am I sweating? I feel like I'm sweating.
Are we making you nervous?
No, I just have lots of layers on.
I think y'all should advise them before
That
they
it's
come.
hot.
That's hot in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we
Can I
knew that
take
you
my
had like a
jacket
Christian
off?
background.
Yeah.
We were like, let's make it feel like hell, you know?
Yeah. So no, there was a clown play. Should I wait till my snack?
Do you want help?
Maybe. Can
Yeah.
you pull on that?
Yeah.
Thing? Okay. Oh, God.
Wow, that is all
It's funny. It's like a tight. I'm like slimy under this.
You would, like, grab the other's like,
Oh, you're free.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Okay.
I love that this is an audio video. Can you just pull on that?
Look at my sweater.
You're free.
it's beautiful.
That was a good costume change. So we were doing this clown play to witness to people, and like each clown represented a different sin. So there was
God.
like,
Which clown were you?
I don't remember, but we had there was like premarital sex clown, and but there was a
Who's supposed to go what's the clown?
no.
How do you dress up like
this
that?
is back to the abortion thing, because there was an abortion clown.
That's awful. I mean, someone sat around and said, "This sounds like a good idea. Let's do
telling
it."
you, we did some weird shit, but.
Breathe, Amber. Breathe. Clown. So you were one of the clowns.
I was one of the clowns.
Okay.
But I'm circling back around to your question. So, the day that that Supreme Court thing leaked, that they were planning on overturning Roe versus Wade, I had a show that night, and all day I was like,
What city were you
should I
in?
talk about Portland, Oregon? So I was.
No.
So I was like,
Do I dress up like a clown?
yeah. So I was like, do I talk about abortion clown today
Oh, wow.
in Portland, Oregon?
God. Well, did you?
I did.
How'd it go?
And they
That's where they were like, no.
Yeah.
no,
So
no.
so I did the thing, and they all kind of groaned,
Ugh.
and then I just was like, don't get mad at me. I'm just telling you what happened. And then they all laughed about something totally terrible back then
Yeah.
and that day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like sometimes you just gotta laugh. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you like, in that experience, you just broke that wall where you're like, guys.
Yeah. Well, I made a joke. I mean, I made a joke about how terrible the thing I just said was on that day of all days.
That's why do you think you'll ever like bring the clown thing back on its feet?
Yeah. Probably. I feel like there's an audience for that.
Definitely.
You could just be that's just a character to talk about as the political stuff unfolds. I'm the abortion clown today.
Yeah.
God. But for the most part, people are pretty like receptive because you have a big online following. So like, how do you get a lot of comments where you have to just like ignore, or is it?
I don't know how I've avoided haters.
That's so nice.
It's not even. It doesn't even seem real because on the internet, like there's a lot of haters.
Mm-hmm.
So far, I've managed to not have any negative feedback. I feel like I've slipped into some weird dimension where everyone loves me.
I love that.
Well, I think when you're authentically yourself and you're not trying to offend, but you're just storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're going to come see my show, you're already on board that I'm going to tell you some really terrible stories.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
with humor.
Yeah. So your new hour that you were working on that I saw is so good.
Thanks.
Yes, it's so great. And I feel, didn't you say, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but you said something about like for a while you tried to be a version of a gay man that you thought you had to be.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that? Because that's so interesting from you accepting that you were gay and now you're in a new era.
Yeah. I don't. So back then, before the internet, you know, the idea of like sexuality and everything was just very, are you this or are you that? Mm-hmm. Like pick a side. It was just very one or the other.
Yeah.
There was no nuance to anything, you know? And so, I mean, I suffered for the identity of gay, you know, like in this world where that was not really accepted. And then, you know, for definitely the next 10 years after that was sort of like trying to fit into a world that I don't really fit into at all. And, you know, finding guys to date on gay.com and, you know, and then going to a gay bar and, you know, and I'm really none of those things. I mean, I didn't know that then. I didn't know who I was at all.
But it was just the avenue to explore it.
Yeah. And it's just like, God, I went through all this. I guess I have to be gay. Like, you know, but I mean, now Gen Z and the internet has like really broken down the spectrums, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I've even, I mean, because that thing you saw was the very first time any of those words had come out of my mouth, you know, so it was pretty clunky, I think. But like, I was even thinking more of like, you know, we have all these terms like polyamorous and, you know, all these different levels and spectrums of what a person is.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like, God, it seems like too much. It's too personal. It's like too many words. Mm-hmm. But the reason it's actually, I think, in resistance to two boxes, put yourself in one or the other, and that's it. And the thing is like that doesn't work for anybody. Almost no one. Even people who I think seem like they're the most this box probably don't really. No one is this or that. Yeah. You know.
We're complex people.
Yeah.
Humans. Yeah.
And like if I think the more you can know yourself, the more you can like navigate through the world and not hurt people. Mm-hmm. You know, I've had so many failed relationships, and now that I have more words, I can look back and be like, oh, that's why.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't really know myself but now I do. And I didn't have to put that person through that. You know,
it sounds like your experiences taught you or were continually propelling you and making you grow. You know, I would say pain creates the opportunity for growth, but I'm really fascinated that you haven't had therapy. and you're at the place where you are of acceptance, and it's not contributed to finding a religion, or it's just finding yourself.
Yeah.
And that's, in this world, it's hard to give yourself permission to do that. And especially, I would think, being a famous person, that it still puts you in a role of something, but you figured out a way to do it authentically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so.
That's rare.
Yeah. I was going to mention that too. Like, can you give advice or talk to how, like, because you did it when you were younger, you know, figured things out with time, I guess. But like, what were some? Because like in the beginning, when you were trying not to be gay, you like read all these books and there was all this stuff. But like, when you had accepted it, what kind of like, I don't know, resources did you explore? Or, and then now in this time when you were like just now talking about like, oh, I'm not just a gay man though. Like, how did you get there? Do you just think all day?
I don't know. I don't know. I think for a long time it was pain that drove me. Like kind of what you just said.
Yeah.
Like in the getting out of the church part, it's hard to explain this to people because now I tell these stories and people laugh, but it sucked. Like in the moment, I have memories of like leaving church and going out into like the parking lot of the church and just weeping, like in my car. Yeah. Because I was in so much conflict, and no, I couldn't let anyone see it. You know. Yeah. It was like an internal hell. You know, and it's like hard to explain that to people now when I'm like in my super fundamentalist church. You know, it's like I was like bawling with pain in my car. Yeah. You know, and like, so I mean, that propelled me for quite a while. Like I've got to figure this out. You know? And then you know, it's just like different phases, but I think it was probably largely always driven by pain.
And then this when you were like, okay, I'm a gay guy, when did it come up, these feelings of like, but I'm not really fitting in this?
It wasn't until I remember, I mean, it's all the internet, man. There's so much information you can see, but I remember there was this interview with a male model. I can't remember his name. He was kind of a famous male model. And just, you know, he's just like sex. All his photos are just like naked sex and stuff. And in this interview, he was like, I'm asexual. And I was like, what? Because he so exudes sex. But in the story he was telling, I was like, oh, I see myself in that a little bit. And I didn't, hearing it coming from him, it was like, whoa. You know, because I was like, I think, you know, my idea of someone who is on the spectrum of asexuality, it's like, that's not cool. That's not sexy. You know? Like you want it to be sexy, or, you know, because that's who we are as people. Like our worth is sort of attached to sexiness, you know? You know? And so it's like to hear this like drop dead gorgeous model be like, I'm totally asexual. It just blew my mind.
When was that? Like when?
This was probably like 8 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that a big permission giving thing? Yeah.
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 And also, and this is something this kind of goes into, like, I feel like most of my life I've been sort of imitating what I thought I was supposed to be as a gay man or as a Christian, but to hear like a drop dead gorgeous model say something so unexpected was like, I've been a poser my whole life. Like
that's the whole other thing to unwind, you know? Yeah. Like how did you self-discover who you know? Once you realized like I'm an imposter.
Well, it was I think it largely started with that. I don't define myself as asexual. I just saw myself in him a little bit. Yeah. You know, and it was just like, oh, I could be.
Well, that he's not this or that. Yeah. He's both. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's a really important thing to learn, is that we don't have to pick. Yeah. You know. And
so much
with that.
For gay men especially, so much self-worth is tied up in your sex appeal, or how much sex you're having, or how sexually desirable you are. And I am on the asexual spectrum. And I'm still a homosexual. Like there's lots of things are possible at once. Yeah. You know, but like that this sort of like unwinding of like just really being myself as a gay man in a culture that like your self-worth is based on your sex appeal, and starting to be like, am I on the asexual spectrum?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make me less appealing?
Or does it, if it's tied to your worth, like how worthy am I if I'm not, following suit?
Yep. And a lot of that also, honestly, getting a little older is more freeing because I'm like, I don't give a fuck.
That's what I was going to ask. I was like, does it get easier
totally.
to just...
It's like, oh, you don't think I'm sexy? Okay. I don't even want sex from you. Why do I care?
Yeah. And that realization of like, oh, I'm on the asexual spectrum. It was less of like a, oh God, my identity, and more just like a, huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
it was, definitely. It was more like, it felt powerful to be able to be like, yep, that's me. And that's something that people don't understand and thinks not appealing. And I kind of don't care. Like that felt powerful. That's
so great. How do you I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this.
I probably will. I feel like I was just thinking this whole interview, I'm like, you guys, I know a lot of things. I'm glad you're here.
How do you get that whatever before you get to your 50s?
Well, I'm 49.
I'm so sorry. So watch your mouth.
I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can. I don't know that I could have, the decade of my 40s has been the most transformative. And I don't know what could have been said to me to make that happen any earlier. There's, I don't know if you can. You'd have to be pretty enlightened, I think, to have at 32 some sort of revelation that set you free from the expectation of everyone around you.
I mean, I wouldn't say anything's impossible, but I think our experiences propel us into these kinds of things. So I think it's hard for 20 or 30 something year olds to just have enough of those experiences.
Yeah, I guess if you've had enough of the right experiences, maybe you could unlock that earlier. Well,
it's like when I'm working with someone with trauma, I can tell them things all day long, but until they get it in here, not much changes. And so that's why I don't do much talk therapy, is because they've got to get a different experience to know it in here. Because if we're just, you probably, in your 30s would have said you knew who you were. You were this role you were playing, right? Yeah. And you believed, there's a part of you that truly believed that. But when culture and society and religion and everything comes at us to try to tell us we're right or we're wrong, that can really, it shakes that up. It's not grounded in anything, versus when you get pushed to know more of who that is, then it doesn't matter. And where you land, where you are now, I think is, you guys can think whatever. It doesn't really change what I know in here. And it's your experiences that moved you there. You can have I call surrounding yourself with expanders, people that let you think. So I would say even that male model served as an expander for you, that let you think beyond what you already did know at the time, or try new ideas on, I deconstructed in religion, and it was people around me I was having conversations with or books I read that was oh, maybe there's one God and it's all the same. It just let me think about it differently. It gave me permission to explore it. And so I think it'd be really hard for a young person. It's not impossible, but.
Great.
Yeah.
How old are you? I have no idea.
32. You nailed it. You know everything.
I don't want this conversation.
It's amazing.
I don't want to leave this conversation with it being thought that you can't know yourself in your 30s.
For sure.
But to really, it's just the experiences.
Because you do know that person.
Yeah.
You do know who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think just and I do feel myself with meditation and, mindfulness, more of letting things go. It's just a change is so hard and I'm sick of it. Anyway, enough about me.
What's hard about change? For you personally?
I just I like when things are how they are and good and stable. It's probably going back to my childhood, but like I like when things I can like get a hold on things and be like, okay, this is how it is, and then I don't like when life is like, bah! Just kidding. Now we got this. It's just like it's just I don't want that.
But when you've had those, is that when you've seen some growth?
Yes, but like, why does it have to be that way? I just want to talk to God or whoever designed it this way and be like, why does it have to be like that?
I don't think it has to. I think as a collective people, we are evolving into different ways of doing it, that it doesn't have to be a pain all the time. I think we're becoming more conscious of spirituality and what that is, and that it's not in a box. So I think we are evolving as a human race.
Definitely. I think part of the pain is like not letting go. That's just something I got to practice. Letting go of outcomes.
Yeah, because you start having experiences where you're like, I stressed about that so much and it happened anyway. Or it's like you start to realize, like, because I remember when I was younger, like at least trying to control some uncontrollable things, and going through it enough, you're like, that doesn't work. So I might as well kind of free myself of trying to control that.
Yeah. How do you do that?
I think you just have to feel it a few times. Like, because that's like a thing you can explain, but until like,
You've tried to control it so many times.
Yeah. It's just like, that doesn't work. And it sucks when I put myself through it. So I'm going to not do that anymore.
I mean, I've gone through those situations enough times where it's like a way I approach things now. I'm kind of like, if this is what happens, then we'll go with it. But I don't try to plan or make it. I don't try to hold so much into it has to happen this way, because I've just learned it doesn't go the way that I want it to when I'm trying to.
So in a like a literal sense, like, are you just like, I'm going to stop thinking about that now?
Probably.
That's interesting.
It's like this inevitable apathy that envelops everything around you.
That sounds really nice.
Well, I think... Okay, I'll be a therapy on you a little bit. It's being in the present moment. It's not just don't talk about it, because it's if I say don't think about a red apple, you just thought about it.
Yeah.
And so it's not, you can't talk your way out of or into something, but it's just present moment. And so if you notice your thoughts going there, then just redirect thoughts. When you do that enough, you're creating a different pattern that becomes an automatic way you think about it. Because we spend so much of our time in the past or the future, either I should have or in trying to anticipate and create outcomes. Like if I can, plan enough for it to go wrong, we think we can prevent it from going wrong. But we normally, your life for a minute was, I'm going to plan for this thing to go wrong, thinking it might hurt less, but rarely is that the outcome. But I've just had enough of the experiences of, okay, I'm just going to throw my hands up and be like, okay, if it happens, it happens. If not, just like with I'm going to make funny videos because it's a pandemic without the agenda, present moment, or even meditation, being with self without an agenda, present moment without an agenda. That's where I think it's a mindset shift, not just a don't think about it. I say, notice why you're thinking about it.
I love that. Yeah.
Also, as the years pass, I think most people start to have a realization of like, oh, my life is going by.
Yeah.
Like I think I started to feel like a panic in my 30s of like, I thought I was going to have a full-on career at this point. I thought this was going to happen, and none of it happened. And like, I started having this realization that like, this is my life. Like I keep like thinking tomorrow everything's gonna work out. Meanwhile, right now I feel pretty shitty. and my life it starts to go by very fast,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And now that I'm 50, I probably only have a couple of years left. So I'm like,
Don't be so cheery.
I need to enjoy. Like, I'm basically at the end. So I need to really enjoy myself today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you I'm curious what are your goals for this chapter that you're in of you popping off with comedy?
This is the craziest thing to be able to say, because I have been so unsatisfied my whole life. But like I said earlier, I want this just a little more stabilized and solidified, because it's still fairly new. It's a couple of years new, but we had this meeting with a Zoom meeting with some people in my agency. They're like, where do you want to go next? What do you want to do? And I'm like, we're already doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm not opposed to other things happening, but I love this. So let's just set this in stone and just make it as good as it can be. But I've arrived.
How beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's being in the present moment, and then things that you didn't expect, good things are going to appear, and you'll just be like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah. I'm very happy for you.
Thanks.
Yeah. You needed that life.
I needed it.
Yeah. What a great surprise, though, from the pandemic that was.
It's been great for me.
Know.
The pandemic really worked out.
Let's get another one.
Yeah.
Well, you never got COVID. You really are like a shining star of the pandemic.
It shook up the world, and it's terrible for the world, but it just shook everything up, and you know.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not glad that COVID happened, but I've gotten to see and witness from working with clients and in my own life, seeing how it shook us up in a good way. You know,
Definitely.
some hard things for sure, but
Yeah.
good things have come from it. So.
It's funny, like, because before the pandemic, I had a day job that I was not super happy about, but at that point, it was like, it's my health insurance, it's how I've been paying my bills. Like, I can't. Like, when you're younger, if you hate your job, you could just be like, bye, and go work at Starbucks for a while or something. But like, it gets harder. You can't just do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And so I was definitely feeling this like middle-age trap. And it's, you know, I wanted to leave that job, but I didn't know how that was even possible, you know? And like, I wasn't, you know, it was fine. It's just like, this is not really what I want. I don't know how to get out of it. I can't just leave. And then the pandemic happened, and they fired everyone. And it was like, oh shit. You know, there was like a moment where I was like, this is disastrous. But in fact, it was incredible.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I didn't see how anything else could be possible. And I'm so glad it happened. But when I got fired, I was like, how am I going to pay for things? You know?
Surely they're not going to make me.
Yeah.
Everyone's in this position.
Right.
But like, but like you can't, it's like, sometimes when it seems like there's no way out or something, there totally is.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah,
good
life
lesson.
keeps going, for sure.
Yes.
For
sure.
The last question that I have, unless you have that.
Go for it.
What's something that you do for yourself that you just love? It can be like eating cheese in the morning or whatever.
I'm a very slothy person. I really.
What can you say more?
Yeah.
You just crawl through trees.
Yes, literally, I am. I wish I would. No, I get a lot done, but I'm also I love to sleep. I love. I require a lot of downtime and a lot. I'm pretty introverted. And so like after a show or something, I can't go out. Like I have to go back to my room and like be quiet. And when I drive to places, I drive in complete silence.
I do that too.
You do.
Yeah.
I think there's two kinds of people, because some people are like, what? Like, and then occasionally there's like, oh yeah, me too. Like I will drive to Los Angeles 3 days, dead silence.
No.
Yeah.
No podcast.
Nothing.
No singing.
Nothing.
When you find that nothing box, it's nice.
Maybe I need to try that out. That's really cool.
Is it?
I mean, well, that's impressive though, because especially for performers, did you ever have that feeling of like, oh, I got a network, like, and then yeah.
I mean, it's almost like at a party when you have to network, I have to kind of create a character for myself and kind of
a clown.
I become abortion.
And people love it. More.
I just can't imagine that. I'm sorry, the clown thing.
We had little plastic fetuses.
What?
Kevin, what are you saying?
With the clown play? Were you handing them out?
Wait, do you know who the director of this was?
The Lord.
Wait, he's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wow.
What would you just hand it out a baby fetus to people and would say what?
It was to show like at
this is what
how many weeks this is what a fetus looks like.
But you had clown makeup on.
Mm-hmm. That
would be scary.
All through high school.
Maybe that's the point.
All through high school. If you see a picture of me in high school, it's unexpected because I had very long hair and I wore a biker jacket. Like in my church, to like look like you were on TV or something was like a good witness. Like it would draw the youth in.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's so like today's version of like the skinny jeans that pastors wear, like skinny jeans.
I guess so, probably. Yeah.
Blazer. Yeah.
But if I show you, I'll show you a picture. In my biker jacket breast pocket was a little plastic fetus.
Wow, did that make you feel strong?
Kind of, yeah.
Oh my God.
He's got the whole world in his pocket.
Yeah.
Wow. You are freaking cool. And now I know why you drive in silence, because I feel like you've lived it all and you just need a moment.
I need a log.
Well, I was like, how do you remember all these stories in the detail that you do? Like, do you just remember it and like,
I need to dress up as a clown with a plastic fetus?
It's all very specific. It's kind of hard to forget.
It's great. It's working for you.
It is so good. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, this has been fun.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and sharing. Sure. I would love for you to plug where everybody can find you and anything.
Yeah, all of my stuff is on my website, like links to all of it. And that's my name, kevinjamesthornton.com. But all of my show schedule, I've got a huge calendar for 2023, and a lot of it's already on sale. Beautiful. And my podcast is there. All my stuff is on my website.
And that's Kevin James Thornton.
Yes.
THORNTON.
Yeah.
TON.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you. It was fun.